Okay, hello everyone. Today I will be reacting to the video called Understanding Adolf Hitler, which I think features Nick Fuentes. Um, I chose to comment it because I agree that it's important to understand Adolf Hitler. And I know Nick Fuentes is a very controversial figure, so I'm curious what he's gonna say. Yeah, let's see. Okay, I'll start from the beginning.
What's the post-war consensus? And it's like, it's the answer to why America can't have nice things.
Right.
Why can't we have nice things? Because Hitler.
Right. It's all basically a reaction to Nazism. And it's this idea that never again, that's the mantra, never again will we allow a Hitler to come to power and to prosecute a Holocaust against the Jews or the gypsies or the gays or the disabled or whoever, the enemies of the state. And so you start to get all these different books like The Open Society. You start to get books like The Authoritarian Personality. And they start to try to dissect how did a country fall under the sway of a charismatic, totalitarian, fascist leader that not only committed a genocide and made death camps with gas chambers, so the story goes, but also the militarism. They declared war on the entire world and brought the world to the brink of a catastrophe, or really they killed 100 million people effectively. And what they work out basically is we cannot have hierarchy. We cannot have an exclusionary nationalism, cannot have the kind of unity that they had in Nazi Germany, they say, is what created that. The kind of pride in race, nation, God, that kind of cohesion, that leads necessarily to exclusion, necessarily to persecution. And so you get this consensus after World War II. How do you prevent the Nazis from happening? We have to open up society. We have to make a society where tolerance, multiracialism, religious pluralism, that has to be the new doctrine. And so that is the biggest shift, because, I mean, you could say during World War II, you have the German-American Bund take over Madison Square Garden with giant portraits of George Washington. We didn't want to go to war with Germany. We wanted to stay out of it. The idea that we wanted to go to war with Germany to stop fascism, we got bombed at Pearl Harbor. That's why we went to war.
Right.
America did not want the war, and certainly not for ideological reasons, certainly not to free the world from racism. But yet they use that as a founding myth to kind of create this new world based on these sort of Atlantic liberal principles.
Right. What you were describing of, giving way to inclusivism and.
Well, okay, yeah, I mean, let me think about Nick Fuentes' opening remarks. So, at least to big extent, what's important to discuss and point out that indeed American intellectuals, which were predominantly leftists, always supporters of Marxism, all sorts of big government and interventionism, never fully understood how Hitler came to power, never understood what the problem was, and they indeed are doomed to repeat the same mistakes. Yeah, and so Nick Fuentes is right in some sense. Indeed, he mentioned that George Soros' open society idea was somewhat inspired by his experience in the Nazi Germany, right? At least, well, he wasn't the author of this idea, but he tried to act upon it. And indeed, he understood it as some sort of erosion of all possible hierarchy, like it some sort of anarchical idea that we could not, I don't know, create any some sort of order and the rule of law, because that would be kind of exclusive. And we see it in the actions of George Soros and people who he tried to promote that we see that they tried not to prosecute people who commit crimes based on their race, essentially, right? They say, well, that in their opinion, it's like we're imposing our morality on them against their will, and we shouldn't do it. So otherwise, we'll be like people in Nazi Germany. I think that's kind of vague idea behind their thoughts. I don't know how to explain it more precisely. I'm not sure I even can. In a sense, yeah, that took this idea of, every person should be kind of left on his own, right? And the government should not bother him anyhow. And well, basically push it into some sort of territory where we should just allow everything, and we just including like crime. So they're basically, I guess, against some sort of classical liberal ideas that we need to have government to counteract to the initiation of force. And I don't know. I'm not sure how they think it could work. In what sense? Like, it seems like expected that if somebody commits a crime, there has to be some sort of reaction. Like, why would you protect a criminal from, natural reaction of people against him? Because that's what they're trying to do, essentially. They're trying to protect the criminals from the righteous response. That's I think the take on Hitler, yeah, and it's just wrong. Yeah, the reason why leftist intellectuals can see what led to Hitler is because they don't have any self-reflection. Yeah, they don't understand. They think that everything they're doing is right. They don't see how their own policies with huge budget deficit, government spending, regulations, taxations destroy nations. They blame the hyperinflation in Weimar Republic on reparations. It's literally the author of this idea is literally Baron Keynes himself. So yeah, they lie about Hitler, and basically he created some sort of picture of him, and he's like, oh, he's just this universally bad guy because he killed like so many Jews or he started so many wars, and they completely miss out on, well, the fundamental problem, like the ideology behind it and how it emerges. And they almost praise his economic policy. I mean, there's two options. Like, if you would tell them anything that Hitler did out of context, they would praise it. If you tell them that it was done by Hitler and you tell them the consequences, they would call it capitalism and say that it was bad. That's the options. And that's to a situation where people like Nick Fuentes or anyone else could say, well, why not to try fascism again? Like, yeah, I'm not gonna kill a million Jews. I'm not gonna invade anyone. But what's your position to his economic policies, right? And the leftist intellectuals would have no response. And indeed, that's why they try to censor any talks about Hitler as much as they can, because they could not face this debate honestly. Yeah, let's see what they're gonna say next.
Diversity and open borders and all those kinds of things. Did you ever read Reno?
R.R. Reno, yeah.
Yeah, Return of the Strong Gods. Mm-hmm. Did you read it?
No, but I'm familiar with the argument.
What do you think about that concept?
I think it's totally true.
I think it's true too. Yeah, it was one of the better books that was kind of my introduction to the post-war consensus.
Yeah, I don't know this book. Um, yeah, but I agree that the leftist take on Hitler is just, it's either bad or worse than bad.
Right.
It's basically when people, they're like, what, what's this magical word? Like the James Lindsays of the world, they don't like it. What's the post-war consensus? And it's like, it's the answer to why America can't have nice things.
Right.
Why can't we have nice things? Because Hitler.
Right.
And that's pretty much it. That's about as far as it goes. Is that if we actually care for the native citizens of the country, if we actually want to promote their welfare for the good of us and our posterity, right? The founders didn't do it for India; they did it for their children's children. And if we actually keep the wishes of the founders and we keep the demographics of America to actually be Americans, then somehow that automatically just lends towards gas chambers.
Yeah, I don't know what he means by the demographics of Americans to remain Americans. There's no clear definition. Like, there's not even like, I don't know, genetic test you could have to prove that you're American. What is this, Englishman? I don't know, because they're all kind of Englishmen, right? Uh, and I don't know what he means that the founding fathers cared about the, well, how you say it, wellness or welfare of the people. Yeah, I mean, you could say they were by building the right system, but that's not the system which take cares of people. That's kind of fundamentally wrong. It's what happened is you gradually replace the system built by the founding fathers by this welfare state, which cares about people, and then indeed, like, it's going to be abused, and especially when it's coupled to this kind of egalitarian ideas that we have the duty to help underdeveloped countries and all those poor people who, have less opportunities. Yeah, that's you in a situation where egalitarians will bring all those people in, and they're gonna just give them, well, food and water and free healthcare and all the stuff at your expense, um, which will lead to backlash, which we are not basically witnessing right now. Well, I don't know. It seems like they think the solution is, oh, we need to care about our own people, not those foreigners, which is just kind of ill-defined, and it's wrong. It's not like you're supposed to care about anyone. It's supposed to be you intervene to counteract violence, and that's all. It's not about creating welfare for Americans only. In this case, it looks even more stupid than with Hitler, because in Hitler at least has some sort of German race. But even in his case, it was some sort of half myth, right, about Aryans. Uh, so I just don't know. It seems like nationalism just fundamentally anti-intellectual. I don't know what the positive view here is.
Right.
Which is insane. But that's become like the founding myth that everything else has been built upon. I mean, you think of just the number of Hollywood films, in the last 80 years surrounding, the Holocaust or World War II. And I mean, it's a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of writing, a lot of effort has gone into, to really building upon, and solidifying this myth that that Hitler was the worst person to ever live, and that fascism is the scariest thing that there's ever been, and
Yeah, I actually agree, and that's left. The left takes, understand Hitler really badly, and indeed, like, they don't understand what the actual problem were, because they was the actual problem. They led to it. It's their fault, and instead, like, they try to focus on the most obvious crime. Oh no, 6 million Jews were murdered. For them, it's like this kind of over bloated, oppression of minorities. back then when Jews were high on the oppression scale, high on the victimhood scale. That's what Hitler is for them. It's like, oh no, he just attacked the minorities too much, beyond what we could even comprehend, and that's why he's the worst. And Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, well, we just don't talk about them. It's like, yeah, but they didn't oppress the minorities, right? They were all like, on a noble path, trying to build communism. Maybe they kind of failed, but uh, they were trying their best. So okay, I totally agree with them. Hitler was not the worst bad guy in the room. He was not the worst. There are literally people worse than him, like Mao, Stalin, Pol Pot. They're all worse than him. They were more consistent and strongly adherent to these evil collectivistic ideas, and implemented them more consistently than him. So yes, they are literally worse than Hitler, and the left will never admit it, and they will call you crazy because of that. But that doesn't mean that Hitler is any good. That's the problem. That I'm afraid that the young people, when they will uncover the fact that they've been lied to about Hitler, that almost every piece about him is just a leftist propaganda, they will think that now he's good, that now we should really try it again, that fascism is the right way, which is not. As I said, if you just cross out, erased all the problems with Hitler, which again left's trying to um, point out or emphasize, like Holocaust and militarism, the problem still remains. Like, he built a brutal dictatorship with central planning. Like, you had price control on everything. You had uh, people forced into centralized governmental labor union. You have party members essentially dictating to business owners what they can and cannot do, cannot buy, who they can and cannot hire. You can have you had like workers working overtime, um, because the productivity was low. You have shortages because of price controls, right? And you have gigantic bubble of government debt created by the welfare state, and this scam with MIFU bills that just entirely failed system. And the left will not talk about all of it because they like all of it. They like the welfare state. They like when businessmen are held at gunpoint. That's what they want. And that's why people like Nick Fuentes and this guy will be confused, right? It will be very hard for them to realize that fascism is not a solution. It's more like a forbidden fruit for them, right? Young people will think, oh, wait, they could go and ask, like, for example, I take this question. In school, you probably were taught that Nazi were burning books, right? And it is kind of bad. It kind of shows that they are, they're pro-censorship. And this is fundamentally anti-intellectual. Why would you burn a book? If you don't like a book, don't read it. Someone else might read it, right? Why would you do this? It's like really you're on the wrong side of history, right? And we were usually never told what kind of books they were burning specifically. And of course, there's a lot of them, and mostly was some sort of communist books. There was some writings and some sort of transgender ideology, actually, pushed by some, newly developed by some doctor. So you could say it's kind of strongly mimics what we see today pushed in schools in America, right? You have all this nonsensical neo-Marxist transgender propaganda, and we see moves by the scientists trying to ban it, to get it out of schools. And he's been compared to Hitler, right? He's like, oh no, why you're banning books for children? Yeah, are you like Hitler? And now if people look at it and see the parallels, they would start thinking, well, maybe Hitler was right actually. Well, is it like if they were pushing the nonsense on kids, well, we should have burned these books, and they would start to go down this path and think like, well, maybe Hitler was right about something, and they start to think about it as a potential solution, which actually lead to nowhere. It lead to, again, as I said, stockpile of debt, which essentially forces you to militarize and starts a war to seize someone else's resources. So that's just stupid. But that's like almost inevitable right now. I don't know what's gonna happen, but it looks kind of bad.
And you and I would probably differ on that. Like, I don't think Hitler was a Christian. Do you think he was a Christian?
No, I don't.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think that he was a Christian. I think he used a lot of Christian rhetoric, which makes sense because I think most of Germany was Christian at the time. And Lutherans, Martin Luther.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's another point. He said, well, he used Christian rhetoric. Well, what does he mean by it? Because if you follow the Enlightenment, like I would say, at the peak of it, people rejected religion as much as they could and embraced reason. And that's delivered a strong hit to the Christian morality and what you call Christian rhetoric. And the people who were able to preserve this Christian morality, which is altruism, were Kant and Hegel. And they were explicit about it. Like that's literally Kant's quote, altruism could not be justified by reason. And therefore, he attacked reason. He tried to undermine it in order to preserve this kind of essentially Christian tradition. And Hegel, well, he basically, well, continued this tradition, and he grew even further. I mean, he looked like a really religious person, and his idea about this, eternal spirit which live in all of us, it looks very religious. And Hegel and his followers, people like Giovanni Gentili, they were the ideologues and philosophers of fascism, which were partially adopted by Hitler. So yeah, he says Hitler uses Christian rhetoric. I mean, he uses indeed the prevalent thoughts back then in Germany, which was this Hegelian cult, which again agrees on altruism, agrees on state control, and somewhat overlaps with Christian morality, not by accident.
Being a German, but I think that Germany was a great nation. I mean, but you look at like Weimar Germany in the 1930s, and it's like, such a terrible place. They honor women who are mothers, and you get property taxes shaved off if you're bearing. I mean, it's like, it's actually pretty good, and like we won't tolerate pornography in our schools, and those kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. You see what happened here. It's like he started to think, well, isn't kind of good? I mean, that, he banned pornography, right? Or he again, this person praises the welfare state. It's again for the same reason, because today's American conservatives, they're partially leftists. They're partially leftists themselves. They're socialists. They are pro-welfare state. And again, their main disagreement with American left, right, the Democratic Party, is nationalism versus globalism. So yes, are very close to Hitler in that sense, that they are pro-welfare state and pro-intervention, just, for our people, for our nation. And they're pro-policing morality, like in alignment with these Christian values, banning pornography and so on. So you could see why Hitler is appealing to them. And again, I don't know, because they never studied him properly, maybe that they don't understand what the problem is. Like, don't understand that this is a dead end. I'm sure they're gonna come up with some excuse why exactly the Hitler failed, and they probably will either blame, the Allies or some of the mistake he did, like minor mistakes. I don't know. Let's see.
I think Hitler capitalized on a lot of what was already there, groundswell. Like this sense of like, by God, we'll have our home again. That was kind of what was going on. So I don't think he was a Christian. I don't think he was the last Christian prince. But at the same time, I just don't find it compelling that he's the worst guy ever.
I'm excited to announce.
Yeah, he's not the worst guy ever. I guess that's all. That's no, it's just the ad. Continues after the ad. See?
And I also think that just because I'm old enough at this point, like I know just from things that are said about me, I think, one, the atrocities that happened, I think that they were probably not as bad as we've been told. And two, the real atrocities, the things that happened that were valid or legitimate, some of them may be directly tied to Hitler, but then some of them were probably also instances where Hitler was like, yeah, you need to banish these people. And then someone, close to Hitler was like, banish, wink, wink.
Yeah, you see, that's the standard line. I mean, now we're trying to create excuses. Like, no. Now you see, these people already embraced Hitler's ideology. You see, they partially agree on him again. Because that's what the problem which left could never address, because they don't have any arguments here. And now again, now they're just gonna ignore all of the problems, and now they're gonna say, well, the crimes were not that bad, which is technically not true. I mean, the left tries to overblow them, of course, but I don't think how you can make them lighter. They will try to say that, oh, Hitler didn't know it himself. I mean, it's just, the bureaucracy or like overdo it. And that's exactly the same excuse socialists have all the time for Soviet Union. Like, oh, no, it just like, it was a great idea, but just some people on local places, they overdid it. And that's why we had all those mass killings. Like, nobody was really asking for it. And it's just totally untrue. Like, you got what you should have expected. And in case of Hitler, it's true that he was trying to preserve a good image of himself for history. So he rarely were giving like direct lethal orders. However, in case of, for example, again, extermination of the disabled people, which is again one of the famous instances of his crimes, there was a direct letter from him specifically giving an order to do it. And it's known because this decree was so unbelievable and so atrocious, right? That the people at local places, right, who were enforcing it or who were, standing in the way, didn't believe it, didn't believe that it come from Hitler, and they asked for the proof. And that's why he had to write this letter. He had to make it clear that no, it's the Führer's order, so you have to obey. And that's why they're able to push it. Otherwise, yeah, it was just absolutely horrifying. And again, the ordinary people were not even on board with it. It's more indeed like the Hitler, some party members, and actually doctors who were involved in it were really complicit with these crimes. Because, yeah, that I guess was too much for ordinary Germans. So yeah, I don't know why they're trying to do this. Again, maybe they just don't see how the ideology which Hitler embraced led to something like this. And we could actually track it. there is a quote by Hitler where he says something like, he explains his action. He said something like, we were forced to sacrifice ourselves for all these weak people, right? For all this disabled one, and it makes our society weaker. Now we have to reverse it. So you see, it's very indicative of how this transition from communism to fascism happens. At first, you have this self-sacrificial cult, worshiping the loser, sacrificing yourself for him, right? And then you have a reversal of this. You keep the collectivism, but you just change the sign. Now you're gonna purge the weak in order to get stronger. That's kind of what Hitler is all about. And notice that your life, your personal life as an individual, still doesn't matter. It's still worth nothing. Just now you will be sacrificed to make the nation stronger. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're right in trying to make Hitler looks better than he actually was.
Like, and then they go off and, like, I mean, it's entirely plausible that he didn't even know necessarily some of the things that were going on. But regardless of all of that, the point is to make the entire foundation, like the foundation for the West was Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I want my listeners to understand, is that really was replaced by, instead of for Christ, it became against Hitler.
It never was Christianity. I don't think the foundation of modern West is Christianity. I think it's rejection of Christianity which led to success of the West. That's what happened. It's a freedom from Christian dogmas. It's the right for the pursuit of happiness. That's what allowed, all the all the goods we have today, and all the wonders of the modern society. So, yeah, I think they're very wrong, and that's gonna end badly. I guess that's it. I don't think I have much more to add. So, see you next time.